We now move on to the next debate, which is Kamran Majid and Legal Services Commission. I call Stephen McCabe.
Good afternoon, Mr Sheridan. I'm grateful for the opportunity to raise this matter. I've come here today to talk about a dispute that has been going on for 3 years and represents serious concerns about the work and responsibilities of the Legal Services Commission. At its heart is a problem about their role in relation to duty solicitor slots and the application of the 2010 Standard Contract and Section 6 of the contract specification. My constituent, Mr Majid, suffered when the Legal Services Commission launched an investigation into fraudulent activities at Knight's solicitors, which resulted in their terminating Knight's unified contract for crime. My constituent is the son of immigrant parents who has represented this country as an Olympic sportsman and won world and European championships in weightlifting. Through his own honest endeavour and hard work, he has achieved the position of solicitor and advocate of our Supreme Court, something you might think we would be proud of, but instead today is the story of how the Legal Services Commission set out to wreck his career and reputation. I have 2 main points I want to highlight. Firstly, the injustice suffered by my constituent, Mr Majid, the reluctance of the LSC to deal with the matter, admit their errors or seek to put them right, and secondly, the appalling performance of the LSC and other agencies one might reasonably expect to call upon in such circumstances. Agencies like the Parliamentary Health Service Ombudsman, the Law Society and the Solicitors Regulation Authority. The latter 2 have distinguished themselves by washing their hands of concerns about the treatment Mr Majid received. The intervention of the PHSO leaves a great deal to be desired, and the behaviour of the LSC in dealing with the fraudulent behaviour of Sajjad Ahmed Khan of Knight's solicitors needs a great deal of scrutiny. It is not Mr Majid who should be suffering as a result of this affair. He is an innocent victim. Mr Majid's experience involves a catalogue of unsatisfactory behaviour from the LSC and an insipid response from the Parliamentary Health Service Ombudsman, which calls into question why we pay public money to support these 2 agencies. Mr Kamran Majid has done nothing wrong, but he is being dismissed as a nuisance and a pest by these agencies because he is unwilling to accept their flawed reasoning, inadequate investigations and failure to address the core of his complaint. This matter has still not been resolved despite 3 years of battling on his part. During this time, my constituent has suffered damage to his reputation, unemployment, a loss of income, and been forced to accumulate considerable debts. He estimates he is approximately £45,000 out of pocket. Let me clarify a point which seems to have escaped the Legal Services Commission, despite so many of their communications being mired in legal gobbledygook. Mr Majid was never an employee of Knight's solicitors. He was a freelance duty solicitor, an arrangement which the LSC approved and encouraged. The LSC approved Mr Majid's application to work as a freelance duty solicitor through Knight's solicitors, and on the 7th of May 2010 approved his electronic registration for a CDS 12. At that time, the LSC knew that Knight's solicitors were under investigation for legal aid fraud and had been since 2009. On the 27th of May 2010, they terminated Knight's solicitors' unified legal aid contract, having previously placed a contract sanction on Knight's solicitors' accounts. When Mr Majid complained to the LSC about the way he had been disadvantaged as a result, Mr Ross Lane of the LSC attempted to muddy the water by claiming that Mr Majid knew that Knight's solicitors were under investigation from 2009. Mr Majid only discovered details of the investigation through a subsequent county court order, but the LSC attempted to use this as a reason for dismissing Mr Majid's claim. Mr Lane, of course, knew that the LSC were actually doing everything they could to resist Mr Majid's FOI requests, which would have shed light on the fact that they negligently registered him with a firm which was under investigation for fraud and withheld that information. Mr Majid has a further complaint with the LSC. When he discovered that Knight's solicitors had lost their contract, Mr Majid asked if he might be able to transfer his slots to another law firm. The LSC were quick to deny him this opportunity and draw his attention to Section 6 of the Standard Crime Contract Specification. However, they are unable to offer any explanation as to why 14 other solicitors whom Mr Majid has identified have been given that opportunity. I could name these people today, people who the LSC afforded an opportunity which they denied to my constituent, people who have suffered no financial loss and no damage to their reputation or careers. I won't name them because Mr Majid has no desire to cause them distress, but I'm happy to share the names with the Minister because I think the time for trying to brush what has happened under the carpet is at an end. Let me further point out that some of those people benefited from this opportunity prior to Knight's solicitors losing their contract, and some afterwards. So the attempts by the LSC to argue that this was an error that they have now put right don't stand scrutiny. They allowed this flexibility in contract arrangements to safeguard the finances and reputation of 14 other people, but denied this opportunity to my constituent and attempted to cover it up. We also need to ask some wider questions today about the LSC. How much public money are they responsible for? I believe it's about £2 million. Who are they accountable to? Can the Minister say in all candour that this is an agency in which he has confidence, or that the transition in April of this year to the Legal Aid Agency will have a significant impact on their behaviour? Mr Sajjad Ahmed Khan, the real villain of Knight's solicitors, is involved in a fraud which may run into millions of pounds as a result of claiming legal aid fees for services which were never provided. It would appear that after 4 years, Sajjad Ahmed Khan is finally likely to be brought before the Solicitor's Disciplinary Tribunal, but as yet there has been no effort to recover the millions he fraudulently obtained, and he is still practising as a solicitor. No wonder the government is being forced to make swinging cuts in legal aid, risking bankrupting thousands of small, decent law firms and calling the whole of our legal system into question. If the Legal Services Commission and its successor is allowed to cover up a multi-million-pound fraud and penalise the innocent because they dare to bring it to the attention of the authorities and get too close to the truth. Mr. Sheridan, there's something rotten going on. I've been attempting to assist my constituent since the summer of 2011. I have had numerous exchanges of correspondence with the LSC and the PHSO. Gina Brady of the LSC's complaint handling team replied to my inquiries with a rather curt note which said that she was confirming that the LSC are of the opinion that Mr. Majid has received a full response to all his complaints and that they wouldn't be responding to any further inquiries. I am here today, Mr. Sheridan, because the LSC is judge and jury, not willing to engage with a Member of Parliament, not accountable to anyone when it comes to malpractice, misuse of public funds, incompetence and cover-up. This agency might be top of the list. I also find it shocking, and I hope the Minister does too, that the PHSO come out of this as toothless and hopeless, and all too ready to drop Mr. Majid's case on the say-so of the LSC, whose arguments simply don't stack up. On the 5th of January 2012, PHSO's assessor Michelle Ewer wrote to me to say they had now concluded their investigation. They used a familiar approach. They asked the LSC about Mr. Majid's complaint. The LSC denied there was any substance to it, and relying on that, the PHSO told my constituent that he had no grounds for his complaint. When he objected and argued that they hadn't looked properly at the substance of his complaint, they then investigated their own procedures and concluded that they had complied with them. I hope the Minister is able to see how unsatisfactory and what a waste of public funds this is. The whole thing is all process and expensive forum filling. Just like too many investigations we've come across recently, this is yet another example of the investigators being more interested in process than in getting at the truth and delivering justice, wasting public money in endless hours of process rather than finding out who did what wrong and what is required to put it right. I can't believe these people accept their bloated salaries and can sleep at night. No wonder there's a crisis of confidence in our public services. Who is the responsible person? Is it the current Chief Executive or former Chief Executive Caroline Reagan, who I understand departed with the usual large payoff after questions about financial controls at the LSC? I don't know how many people work for this agency and its successor, but so far I've come across Stephen O'Connor, who seems to have played a major role in not enforcing Section 6 other than with my constituent, Mr Rimmer, Mr Williams, Mr Forrester, Ross Lane, Sarah Alwyn, Natasha Hurley and Gina Brady. With so many fingers in the pie, it might be better if one person has set out to get to the bottom of this affair. In conclusion, the Legal Services Commission has sought to deny that Mr Majid has a valid complaint. They must know perfectly well that they shouldn't have accepted his registration, given that they knew the firm was under investigation by them and that action was imminent. They were wrong to allow 14 other solicitors to transfer business between law firms, before and after the action against